Okay, so hi. I will try not to turn too much because it hurts my ears. Today I will be talking here about my few favorite shortcuts and pieces that I use every day in Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio, and especially ReSharper. And I will show you some motivational examples, at least hopefully for you. I don't know, how many shortcuts do you use? Like, do you use shortcuts all the time or do you use mouse?
Shortcuts.
Okay, got you.
Sometimes shortcuts, sometimes mouse.
Okay, Yuri?
Most the shortcuts.
Okay, nice. So maybe you can teach me something afterwards as well. Yeah, definitely. Alt Enter. So why does this even matter? For me, it's very useful, like to use mouse and to use keyboard and change that and so on. I'm not the like shortcut fascist that will tell you like throw away your mouse and the only way to go is using V or Vim and you have to have a key binding for everything. But I also find that if I don't use shortcuts, a lot of stuff can take me a long time. And if I don't use the right tools, a lot of stuff can take me a long time. So I tend to use shortcuts for the stuff that prevents me from thinking when I don't need to be thinking. Like renaming a variable in one place, I can do that manually and just type it in 5 places, or I can just use a tool and rename it like with one in one go. And it will also probably tell me like you have conflict with some other variable in here, so don't do that, and help me a lot. So that's why I really like ReSharper, and I cannot really imagine I would be not using it for my day-to-day development. Because, for example, the other half of our team doesn't have ReSharper because the company that sells them to the customer doesn't want to pay for it. And sometimes they just do refactoring, and it's, for example, big problem at the moment when we have .NET Core, where we have all those transitive dependencies. So if you break something in some low-level library, then your whole project will just go to hell. You will get millions of errors and so on. And if you want to do refactoring in this, it's very useful to have a tool that will tell you, if you move this from this place to this place, you will be missing something in the destination library. And that's what ReSharper does. And so they can do refactoring for 2 weeks, something that I can just finish in 1 day with ReSharper because it just tells me what I need to do. So another aspect of this is when we edit code, we tend to do that a lot during the day, and we also tend to navigate in the code a lot, and we need to keep a lot of stuff in our minds when we are going through libraries, debugging, and so on. So why not have shortcuts that will help us, go from one place to the other place very easily, so we don't have to click through menus, we don't have to go through the Solution Explorer and so on. So I will try to show you some of those. So the first one, obviously, for ReSharper is Alt-Enter. So if you're not the absolute beginner with ReSharper, you probably know this one. So it enables you to do most of the stuff most of the time that you need. So for example, I have this very ugly class. And I already can see that I have some underlines here. This name doesn't really look very nice, doesn't really follow the convention that we have. So I just press Alt-Enter pretty much all the time, and it tells me what I can do. So a good name, a better name for this one would be, I cannot name my classes, but that could also be an interface based on the convention that we have. So maybe we can apply it another time. Cannot name my classes. Still not the best name, but at least it follows the convention now. Then we have a field, and we can also apply stuff on that. But we can see that all of those fields probably have the same problem. So what we can do is that we, didn't want to do that. That we rename it according to the naming convention, and we can also open this menu and select fix the same problem in the file, fix the same problem in the solution, fix the same problem in the project. This is especially helpful if you're just moving libraries around and then you realize, okay, I have like missing usings in this file, missing using in this file, and you have 200 files where you have missing usings. So you just find one place where there is a missing using, and then you just tell it to fix it in the whole project or fix it in the whole solution, and you are done. You don't have to go from one file to the other and do it manually. Yes, that's what I want to do. And it also tells us that the field is never used, but we don't really care about that at the moment.
Just to mention that you should be really very careful with mass renaming that can lead to
Why?
some problems.
Sometimes there are similar names, and if they name something you didn't want to name, and then other stuff stops working.
Okay,
Sometimes
so
before
then you just build it, and if it doesn't build, it doesn't work.
it doesn't build, it won't work, and you will have to fix like hundreds of other names.
So you
Oh,
just
if
go
you-
back.
It's not printed.
If you
Yeah,
do it
but,
on the whole solution, and your solution has this like hundred of projects, then it can be really
Yeah,
very-
but that's why you have source control. So you can just go back. If it goes really badly, you can just go back, or you can just do it in one project and fix it one project at a time. But it's still better than doing it manually. I'm not saying like it will fix your problems every time and every time we will be correct, but it's still better than just renaming one field after the other. Maybe if you like it, then you can do it. But yeah, it's a valid point. You can break your whole solution when you are doing changes in the whole solution. So that's why you have the chance to go back usually, hopefully.
also careful for comments. Sometimes ReSharper wants to change comments that are not about the field you're renaming. There's about if you apply ReSharper renaming and you apply to whole solution, there's an option to rename it in comments as well.
Okay,
But
like
ReSharper doesn't know what is part of the name of the field, for instance, and what is literally just a word.
let's do an example of that.
Command.
So we have field one is not related. So now if we rename this one, doesn't rename it. So when would that happen?
I think you have to rename it like this, and somewhere there's an option to rename it, apply renaming
that?
in comments as
Searching
well.
comments and
Yeah.
filters.
Okay, yeah, so it's a good idea to unclick this one, usually.
I think I had it on by default.
Yeah, it depends. If you change it in this menu, then it will stay unchecked. But you can also do it in here, and if you uncheck it in here, it won't stay enabled. So if you do it in the first menu, it will. So yeah, that's a good point. Like, unclick this one unless you really, really need it. Okay, next example. What we can also do, very basic shortcut, is Ctrl Shift R. For example, if I would be doing dependency injection, I might want to extract an interface from this class, even though we don't have any public member at the moment. So let's just add one. Can actually type this one. Work. Very useful method. And then we can apply all different refactorings on it. Most of the items in here are very useful. And for example, if we extract an interface, we can choose this one, which would be an X. And then we can choose this member. Good tip here is if you want to just use your keyboard, just press Alt, and it will highlight the stuff that you can select. And then sometimes you need to tab or press M to jump into this menu, and then we can just press enter, and we get a new interface. Usually extracting whole class into an interface if you're doing dependency injection is not the best idea, but you can just select the members that you want, for example, just the public members or just 2 or 3 of the members, and it will automatically put it for you into a new file and create the interface definition exactly as it's in the class and so on. But there are way more refactorings that you can apply. I will go through some of them. For example, this one is pretty useful. If you already have an interface and you created a new method on a class and you want to pull it up into the parent interface, then you can do that. So let's say, for example, we do all the same thing. Just call it word2. And then we can pull the member up and pull it into this interface. So this method will be part of this interface. And we don't have to copy anything, remove anything. Like we could just copy this line, put it in here, remove the public, and we would do the same work. But if we have 5 members, why not do it through the menu in one step? Then another very basic one is Ctrl T that enables us to navigate everywhere. At the moment, even Visual Studio has this shortcut, so you can just type a name of a class. We have like we cannot name my classes in this solution, but the cool thing here is that you can just say the name just, for example, by parts of the name or just by the capitals, like this, and it will be clever enough to select it. Or if you want to be really specific, you can use really capital letters, and it will only select the capital letters in the names. If you have thousands of types, it's very useful. And don't overlook this small checkbox. Again, you can press Alt to see that by Alt-N, you would be enabling this. And then you can search in all the linked classes that you have, which is quite useful. For example, you go to Stack Overflow, you have some extension point, it tells you the interface that you need to extend. You want to find it, then you just press Ctrl T, Alt I, or just click that selection button, type in the name, and you go directly into the library where it's defined. No looking up for files or anything. Then for navigation within the class, we can use Alt backslash, and it will show us all the members that we have in the class. And if we had a constructor, let's just create one really fast. Type store. Oh, okay, good. Then we can navigate to the constructor by typing new, or by typing store, or just name of the class. But I usually use new because that's the easiest one to type. So if you want to look up a constructor in a class and it's not very nicely ordered, then you can just use this one. But you can just jump to any member as well. So you just use Ctrl T, go to the class, Alt backslash to go to the member, and you are directly where you need to be, which I think is much better than just trying to search it within the class with scrolling and looking around. The renaming, we already did that. That's probably one of the most useful ones that are there. So let's say for AS1, so renaming this one would be just going to the identifier, pressing Ctrl RR, and then we can rename it. If we would have more usages, then we can do it directly from the place where we use it, if that would be a valid code. So we don't have to look up the definition, we can just do it from here, and it will change it in both places. And another very basic one is extracting a method. Just do it from 2 plus 2, which would be Ctrl R and M. And that pops up a whole menu where we can select what type of item we want to create. Newly, we have this local function, which is like a method that's defined within a method or within some other member. I don't know why they call it a function when it's actually a method. And then we can give it a name. So let's just call it add. And we have a new method extracted from the piece of the code that we had. And yeah, I'll just copy this one. So one more that I haven't seen anyone using, but you can extract a variable from some identifier. And that's very useful if you like have a piece of code that you know like you will be processing and you want to save the results, maybe just enumerate it into a list so you can see the actual values and then do another operation on it. I use that sometimes when I'm debugging some like very difficult link query. So that would be Ctrl R and V. And it also tells you like in the current scope, it identifies all the same literals and enables you to extract them into a single variable. So in here, if I wanted a variable called name, it also guesses the name correctly, then I can just extract it and it will extract it into a single place. Also useful if you have some constant within code, you just type it in and then you just realize, yeah, this one should be actually something that's configurable. Huh?
No.
Is it funny?
No.
It's very basic stuff, I know.
Well, Roman said that you are already building your
Doing that? Okay, yeah, that's right. And another one connected to R is change method signature. So say we have this add function and we have like, whoa, should be int A, int B, and we are already using this add in 200 places, and we just realized that the order of the items is not very logical of the parameters for the function, so we can just press Ctrl R and S, hopefully, on this identifier. Yeah, and we get this nice pop-up menu that helps us change the signature of the method, and we can move this one down, and it will just change it in all the places where we need them. So we don't have to have methods that are ugly and that have different parameters just because we don't want to refactor the code afterwards, which sometimes happens when you don't have the tools. So for me, it's also very important to not get lost between the windows. I just broke that. And so what I use often is go to previous edit, which would be Ctrl Shift and backspace. And that helps me to navigate where I was, and I especially like it when I use dependency injection. So I will try to show you an example of that right now. So we have those two interfaces, iDependency and iDependency number 2. And we have this consumer class, and we realize, okay, in this method, we need to use the iDependency to do some work. So normally what we would do is that we can go here, we can just define like private field of type iDependency, and we call it dependency, and then we create a constructor, and we edit and so on. But we're just losing focus, and we can just leverage the tool. So we will just start from this place, and we just do underscore to tell ReSharper this will be a field based on your convention, and just say dependency, and then we generate the field. It asks us for the type, so I know I will need an iDependency, and then I can just use Alt-Enter to generate the constructor and the field, and also make this read-only, and then I can just jump back using Ctrl Shift backspace to where I was and just continue working. And I can do the same thing quickly for another one. So that would be iDependency number 2. And I didn't really lose my focus. I can just do this very fast if I'm looking at my screen and not to the side. And I know what will happen, and I just know that I just need to press this terrible combo of Alt-Enter, go to the side, Enter, Enter, and then I'm right back where I was. And I didn't lose any time at all without thinking, go up, search for the constructor, write it in there, order the items correctly, and so on. And it also helps me not to get lost, because sometimes I just change the code, then I start debugging, then I go through 5 different files, and then I just realize, okay, I have no idea where I just was. So I can either press Ctrl Z, 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 and just look at the screen and think like, was it this place where I was? No, that's the place where I was editing the code. So I just jump to the previous edit. There's also this another shortcut, which is Ctrl Shift, comma, I think, which is recent edits where you can see all of that. But personally, I don't use this because it's just confusing and I need to really think about where I was and what was happening. So I just go back 1 or 2 steps. And if I cannot find it, I just use something else.
There's also the shortcut Ctrl minus and Ctrl Shift minus, which
Yep.
Goes to last, not to last edit, but to last scene. So if you are looking through code, it goes to find something and the node is there, and you just can go back.
You can do the same thing with Ctrl Z, I think. You go and click around, then you can just go to the previous place with that. But this is a Visual Studio shortcut. Yeah, I think so. But I personally, I don't use it, but yeah, I see how you can find it very useful. I use Ctrl Z usually.
Do you know the difference between Control backspace, I think, or Shift backspace, or something backspace, to go back and mouse 5? You know what I mean? Like go back on a web page that you use on the mouse. It does something similar, but I'm not sure if it's the same. You have to go back
You
on
mean
the mouse.
the left arrow function?
This one, so that's
The same as going back.
okay. So this is Ctrl
The same
minus.
as on mouse button on the side.
I always just press Ctrl Z, but that's probably not it. This is probably just for navigation.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. See, I'm learning stuff now. Okay, next one. Next one is find all inherited members. I will just look if I have any code for it. No, I can just show you on this one. There should be a code for it. Okay, maybe not. So what usually happens when we use dependency injection is that I go through the code and I end up in some constructor where I'm injecting a dependency and I only have the interface, only have the abstraction. And then I need to find out like who implements this. And with the shortcut Alt-N, it's really easy because it just shows you all the dependent type that depend on this one or depend on any class that derives from this one. So at the moment, we don't have any concrete implementation, so let's just generate this with Alt-Enter, our favorite shortcut. So let's create just one, implement it as well. And then if we look at this identifier with Alt-N, we jump directly to the single implementation that we have. We just implement one more. Dependency number 2. Then we will get the whole list of the dependencies. I think this is very easy to make useful if you're browsing through code. And it also helps a lot if you have a library and you just realize something is happening that shouldn't be. And for example, you go to Stack Overflow and Stack Overflow tells you like, here's an extension interface that you should be implementing to do something. So for example, in our code, we have this special implementation of serialization for CSVs. So if we get like a string that's null or an empty string or string that literally says NULL, then we will represent that as null. And I was quite surprised when I saw that working. So I started, not by looking into our code, but looking at the documentation of the library, how you can do stuff like this. And I got the interface that was called iType converter. So then I went into our code base and just pressed include library types. iType provider, iType converter. Found this one within the library. So here you can see it's highlighted. And then you can either open this menu, look at the inheritors, and get the whole list. And see, okay, this is within our library, not within the real library. So we just look at that, and we can identify in our solution that we are doing something that changes the behavior of the code. Or we can use the same shortcut for this. So if we just decompile it, we can just do Alt-N, and we will get a list of all the implementations. And then we just need to look at this side to see the libraries, and then we can see, okay, this is within our project. It even has a different icon. So it stops you from guessing where you need to go. It just shows you this is something where you are doing something custom, so probably go look there, because you probably are doing it wrong. Right? Then another basic one, find all usages, which we can show on this one, for example. That would be Shift F12, and we get this small menu. No, we don't. Okay, we have only one usage. So if we just duplicate that, then we get this nice menu where we see all the stuff, all the places where it's used. There was also this really nice menu under Ctrl Shift F12 that was advanced usages. And I remember there were more options like writes into properties or reads from properties, which was really useful in some places. But either the functionality changed or I had some special plugin that did this for me. So I don't know how it works now. So now if I look for writes into properties, I have to do it through regular expressions, which sucks. And yeah, then we also have Ctrl Shift and V, which is like a history for pastes. So if you copy something and you want to paste it again because in between you copied something else, then you can get this history. There's also this application for Windows that's called Ditto, right? D-I-I-T-O. That you can get from the Microsoft Marketplace that does the same thing and then has shortcut Control and tilde, I think, like the terminal thing that you do in most of games. And yeah, that's about it. Maybe Ctrl R, which enables you to move files easily between projects. And it also detects changes. So that's the tool that I used for the refactoring that I talked about before. So if, oh, sorry, come on. What? Oh, cool. So we get this menu, and if we put it into CSV loading, then if we get any problems on the next, it will detect them, and it will tell us what we need to do to remedy this, to be able to safely move the file into the different project. And the cool thing about this window is that it's not modeled, so you can just go inside of your code, do the changes, maybe select more files. If it tells you, like, I will be missing this class in the new destination or this interface, then you can move it as well. And then you can just go back and forth, and it will detect the changes again. So very useful for refactoring, especially if you just try to organize your libraries a bit better. And I use that quite a lot. It doesn't really work with the new .NET Core. Sometimes it tells you, like, I will be missing system library, or I will be missing system.io. So just ignore that. But if you see some of your classes, then it will be missing them for sure. There's millions others of ReSharper shortcuts, but I don't plan to go through all of them. So let's just move on and play with Visual Studio, just Visual Studio instead, because it has one very cool feature that I'm not sure if you know, and most of text editors has it, and that's textual replacements with regular expressions and capture groups. So say we have like a CSV file again, and we need to make it into class so we can load it. So I will probably just delete all of this stuff. So we created the class for it, and now we just copied the header from the CSV that we got from somewhere, and we want to convert each line in the CSV into this class. And we use a library, for example, CSV helper for it, but we need to give it some shape to load in. So what we can do is that we can like go through each of the items and just put them into a new line. And Visual Studio will start fighting our efforts and just put it onto different lines and so on. So maybe we need more clever strategies. So what we can do is that we just select the whole line and we do replace. And we select we want to replace with regular expressions. And regular expressions help you find like patterns in text. So what we can say is that we will find word characters, and we will find more of them. So until we find something that's not a word character, like a space, we will be searching, and that will form our whole capture group. And then we just say, so a correct implementation for this would be public string, name of the thing that we want to have as a property, and then get and set, and we have the whole class. We just do that. Public string, then we have to represent the capture group. In this case, this would be a capture group number 1, because 0 is the whole capture. And then we just say get and set. We don't really need to format it. And then we just, replace it. But we don't have a new line. So let's try that again. So we need to add a new line at the end, which would be \n. And then we just tell Visual Studio just format it for us. And we have whole, we just need to select everything. Let me try this. So one more time. And then we have a proper class without much effort. And you can leverage this for a ton of stuff, like I hopefully have some more examples in here as well. Yeah, I do. But this just saved us some time, saved us a lot of effort that would be very manual, very exhausting, and not much fun. In this case, we might not do it faster than if we just be typing it in and doing all the enters and movings with the cursors, but it was definitely more fun to figure out the regex and the replacement.
Okay, just hit the only one I know.
Yeah, I will show you a better example afterwards with some more magic. But if you realize that this is possible, then you can use it for a ton of other stuff. Like, for example, I have this class. Where we just do some basic mapping stuff. And here we would have some class, some DTO, and we want to copy the entity into it. And then maybe on the other side, we want to copy the entity back into the DTO. So maybe we can use AutoMapper, maybe we don't because it's more trouble than worth. And the properties have almost the same name, so it's just quite stupid. So we could take all of those 20 properties and rewrite it, or we can just write another replacement and just switch those two tokens, just to have some more fun. So we select this again. And then we just do this. Find everything that's before an assignment and everything that's after an assignment. Maybe a semicolon would mind. Doesn't matter. If it breaks, we will just fix it. Yeah. It should probably be until the semicolon. And then just replace it in the other order with the same syntax. Ooh, where did that go? Selection. Very ugly, but luckily we can format automatically. And we just didn't have to do it manually. If we had 60 properties like this in 2 classes or 5 classes, this is much faster doing it this way than just typing it in by your hand, doing all the IntelliSense stuff and so on. But this is just very easy examples that you can use as a starter, maybe to find some more usages of your own. I, for example, recently used it in tests where we used enums as inputs, but we needed to change them to strings. So I knew the type of the enums afterwards I captured, and after that I put toString, and everything worked just beautifully. And it was in like 600 places. So this is quite useful for me because I don't have to move around, type the same stuff all the time. It's like more a gamification of the development. So after the whole day of doing replacements, I at least know, like, I know more regex than I did in the morning, instead of just I pressed Alt, Enter, and arrows 600 times today to fix a class. And then also, like, don't forget about the total basics that you have for editing. So you don't have to like select this whole line if you want to copy it. You can just press Ctrl C. It will copy the whole line. You don't have to put it into a whole block. If you want to delete it, just press Ctrl X and it will delete the line, or Ctrl D to duplicate the line if you need. So even the total basics are very, very useful. Then Ctrl KD to format the document, because I often see people like doing the formatting manually. Why would you do that? And then also don't underestimate the power of just pressing Ctrl and Tab to jump between files, because what happens a lot of times is that people have like 100 files in here and plugins just, you know, to see all the stuff in the screen. And then they go between 2 files. And what they do is just like, you know, I'm doing something here, I need to go to the other class. So they just go here and they just can't find it, and then just go here and just open the list of all the other stuff, and then just try to find it. Go here and scroll, and then just realize, okay, not the class that I wanted, so where is it? So just jumping between 2 files is just this. You cannot make a mistake, you don't have to think about it. You just go from one to the other. And if you get used to it, then jumping between 3 classes is just pressing the same shortcut twice. So saves your cycles in your mind. If you need to like try going into one class, remember some identifier that has 3 words in it, and then try finding the other class by doing it by mouse, going there, and then remembering the identifier that you had in your mind. Very difficult to do. If you just switch between the classes like this, you don't have to do any context switches in your mind. Same with Alt-Tab. Like, I'm not going to do that right now because that might break stuff. But for my project, yeah, I would be just switching into weird windows. In my project, I need at least 6 windows open, like one project, one console, another project that has the supporting libraries, another console, browser, Visual Studio Code for the front end, and just switching between. So the startup menu is really full, and just going there every time waiting for the pop-up to show me what browser windows are available and then clicking on it is very difficult, even if you just switch between 2 windows. But if you just do Alt-Tab, it doesn't require thinking at all. Yeah, and then my favorite shortcut of all is just close all documents. That just clears your window, because how often can you keep 60 files in your mind? You need like 4 or 10, and if it starts going to the side, just close everything and start from the bottom. It frees up your mind. Now on to Visual Studio Code. We're getting too long, I guess. So I'll just do that quickly. So Visual Studio Code is especially awesome for all the plugins, refactorings that you have, but also some of the natives items are very useful. Like you have MultiCursor that can jump to the end of the line, which maybe you can now do in Visual Studio too, but it was very recent update. But here we can press Ctrl, Alt, and Space. This is what you can do in Visual Studio as well. But what you cannot do is that you just press End and you jump to the end of the lines. So if we wanted to do the same refactoring, like add a property setter, property type, public type before this, and the getter and setter at the end, we could easily do it with this if we develop in Visual Studio Code. And it's very useful for other types of editings, like you have, I don't know, yeah, anything similar to this.
What was the shortcut again?
So in here, the shortcut to select down is Ctrl Alt and then arrows. In Visual Studio, it's Alt Shift. And then the shortcut to go to the end of the line is just End. And you can also like just navigate by jumping, but that starts to act weirdly because it's a multi-cursor selection and so on. But there are other stuff that you can do, like you can really, depending on the plugins that you have. So in here, if I would be in JavaScript language mode or TypeScript language mode, then I can rename this just by pressing F2. Just give it some name. In normal file mode, I cannot do that. But what I can do is press Ctrl F2 and replace all the occurrences that are currently there. But it doesn't respect the scope like in the previous file. Here we renamed A, but the A out of the scope of the curly braces remained because it understands this is how we parse JavaScript and this is how stuff is done in JavaScript. This one just does textual replacements. So Visual Studio Code is really, really strong in all of those multi-cursor shenanigans that you can do. Like you can press Ctrl D to select the next capture, but for me, it's usually not worth it because I can just do the same thing with regex replacements really easily, and I'm not required to press Ctrl D 20 times, then correctly move to the next character and so on, but I will go and show you anyway. So let's say we have like this class. I will only attempt it once. If it doesn't work, then we can just go on. So if we wanted to do multi-cursor selection on the word public, then we could press Ctrl D as many times as publics we have. And that way we would get the same line. We could do the same thing in this case with just the straight down selection. And then we can like delete those identifiers and maybe like put it into a JavaScript array with putting this stuff into quotes, then adding a comma, just deleting up until the end of the line, and then just deleting the new line character at the end of the line, and that we just do some small fixes. And then we have this awesome JSON array, which is like the only example that I ever saw that the people actually use this stuff for. Because if you have the line endings incorrect, if any of those getters and setters wasn't formatted correctly, it would really suck. And I couldn't finish this. And now I just realized, I made a mistake. So how do I fix that? I just press Ctrl Z 60 times to go back where I was. Or I can just do, the same thing with the regex replacement. You just take this. Like, what I want to remove, here's my capture group, and here's the end of the line that I want to remove as well. And then I just replace it with the first token in quotes, followed by a comma. There will be an extra comma at the end, but I can just delete that if I have 20 identifiers like this. And you have pretty much the same thing. You just put the brace on the start, brace on the end. And if it didn't work, if I did it incorrectly, then I just go back, change my regex, and fix it. Or I can just do it manually. But, like if you have a good example of doing the Ctrl D and selecting it in multiple places, then please show me. But most of the time, the actual refactoring tools that you get, like with JavaScript, we can rename the A like in this way as well. If we have, come on, where's the mouse? if we had this file and we only wanted to rename within the scope, then we can do Ctrl D and D, and we can rename it. But why if you have a plugin where you just press F2 and you just rename it successfully within the scope all the time? If there was 40 representations of name within that one method, I would have to press Ctrl D 40 times instead of F12, F2 one time. Okay.
Does Visual Studio Code have some auto formatting, like Ctrl KD?
It does. It's Alt, Shift, and F, but I don't think I have formatters for this. Do I don't, but yeah, there's a shortcut for it. It's Format Document, Shift, Alt, F. And it depends on the plugins that you have installed.
So you have to set up it before using.
Yeah, you have to install plugins for a lot of stuff. If you, for example, want to do Angular, then you just install Angular Essentials and you have everything that you ever need usually, and some maybe snippets and so on. Yeah, where were we? I don't know. Frozen desktop. So few more shortcuts that you might use is the basic navigation, like you have this Ctrl Shift P for this palette, but the actual shortcut for it is just F1, which is much faster. And then you can do different stuff in here. If you delete this character, the greater than, then you can put in question mark and you will have all the options. And all of those options actually have shortcuts as well, or most of them, that you can use. So navigating to any file would be Ctrl P, and that's the same as if you just delete the greater than sign. Then we have Ctrl P that will do the same thing as Alt / in Visual Studio. It will navigate to any member within the class, like any token. Then we have which one? Ctrl G, like the normal go-to line, which you can also do by putting the colon in here. And yeah, that's it about this menu. If you want to find more options, then just press F1 and just look through the stuff that's in here, or just type in, name of your plugin, and you will get some stuff that you can do with it. And then for the final demo, maybe to blow your mind a bit, I will use Notepad++. Because it has one cool feature that I used. So in here again, we can do regular regular expression replacements with tokens, but we can also do them with macros. So we had this convention in our code base that said every parameter to any method has to start with arg, like arg, and then be followed with the actual name of the parameter capitalized, which was really stupid. Because then anything you wanted to type with IntelliSense, you had to type in arg and do the name. And then the reasoning behind this was, we really need to know what are the incoming parameters. But every time you had to take this parameter and make it into a local variable because you needed to change the type or do some manipulation on it, then you had to rename it within the whole file. Very easy to do with ReSharper, but very annoying and not how you write C#. So then in the end, we decided, yeah, let's just get rid of this stupid convention. But they didn't want to because it would be a lot of work, going through all the files, changing all of that stuff. But then if you realize what you need to do is just, take the arg, take the next letter, convert it into a small case letter, lowercase letter, and put it back in, and maybe do some fixes as well. So when I just search for arg followed by a capital letter, it gave me something like 30,000 hits. So doing this manually would be really fun for like 2 weeks, maybe for a junior developer or something, if you need to keep them busy. Or you can just do it in 10 minutes. So here's my example code that represents our code base, which hopefully is much better than this one. I will just put it in here so we can see if it compiles or not. So I can just walk you through it. So, doesn't do anything special. We have this arc value, very nice convention that we sign it in here, which was something that happened quite a lot. If you wanted to have some reasonable names within the method, then this satisfied the naming convention, and this satisfied your urge to have nice code that's not polluted with arcs. I think I did that like 100 times. And just save that and open it in Notepad. Mouse. Oh, already did that. So this is how it looks in Notepad. This is how it looks in Visual Studio. It builds, hopefully. Yeah, it builds. And so then we just replace this argv with arc_v. We do Ctrl H. Let's just delete this for a moment. And so we say argv followed by any capital letter will be replaced with just the group number 1, and that would give us the capital letter itself. But here we can use macros that will do some transformation, and \l means convert the next group into lowercase letters. So if we captured multiple letters, then we would be converting multiple letters to lowercase, but we captured just one. So we can try to apply that, and we did it 5 times, which gave us pretty nice result. But you can see some problems. If you switch back to Visual Studio, it doesn't compile anymore. So 2 types of problems. One of them, we have local variables that have the same name as the identifier coming from the signature, which sucks. And then we have another problem where we are using reserved keywords to do the naming of the parameters, which is not supported and is incorrect syntax. So let's solve this one first. So what we can do in C# is that we, instead of saying int in here, we can say @ symbol and int, and it will be valid syntax. Not very nice, might be a better name, but it's still better than having this ugly convention in some of the places and not in some other places. So we will first just do replacement on that to solve all of those problems. So if we identify all the identifiers that are reserved, we can just put them into an array and then just do the same trick again, but just prefix it with the @ symbol. So that should fix this problem. So now we have @byte, @int. We mostly had problem with @event and @object because all of the other things were named sensibly, but the event, like arc event, was a problem a lot of time because the event in the event handler is usually just event. Save that. Try to build it, and it builds. And now we have more difficult problem to solve. So if we just do the original replacement again, then we get into the situation where this value equals to value. And I think originally I solved this problem just by going through all the places and just deleting the lines. You could do it from anything else, like a scripting language, and it would be much easier. But why not do it directly with regular expressions? Because I figured how to do it this morning, so I just want to show you. So we have this very simple regular expression. Then we replace it with this conditional regular expression and solve the problem.
Yeah.
Yay.
So Junior would write this one for once. Yes.
No, that's the senior stuff. That's why you are paying so much. So let's just look at it so I can explain what happened. So let's just forget this one at the start. So in regular expressions, what we can do is that we can have a capture group, and then we can have a back reference to that capture group. So what we are saying in here is that any spaces followed by a var, followed by some spaces, because that's the correct syntax in C#, followed by some identifier, and then again followed by spaces, equal sign, spaces. Yeah, if we just remove all the spaces, make it easier to see, there will be one space. Then we are just saying we want this capture group to be captured on both sides. So this is 2 because this is already a single capture group. So if we didn't have this definition, we would have the same thing like we had before when we did the replacements. We have capture group number 1, and then we are saying the capture group number 1 should be on the other side as well. So that's the back reference. And then we have another capture group just because it's useful for the condition in here. And we have a named capture group, which is called definition. I could just do it with 1 if I wanted, or just not giving it any name. And then in the replacement, this is just a simple if condition that says, if this capture group existed, then replace it with this, which is nothing. And if it's not, then replace it with this. So if we capture this, then we will do nothing. So we will not output anything, which will remove the line. And if we didn't capture it, like it didn't have the syntax where we have the same thing on both sides, then we just put the line back. So now we are just replacing with something that says, if this is the same on both sides, then we succeeded and we get this capture group, non-empty. And so we want to remove that. So emit nothing to the replacement. And if you didn't succeed, then emit what you already got. That's why all of this is captured. So we just put the line back in. And we solved the second problem in 10,000 places in our code base. Hopefully.
If you are not using bars, then you are
Then you can just keep the type and just, add another removal, another group, or just ignore the type, remove it, and then just fix the compilation errors. So yeah, but why would anyone not use bars?
Or you can use ReSharper to clean the code out of the declarations and replace it with bars in the whole project.
oh, but then don't commit it because
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you didn't use var in here, then this word just would become something else. Like you would only capture the first word before the equal sign, and then you would just ignore this whole part. It would be just no star something and no question mark, and then you would be doing the same thing. Fixed. Yeah. And so we just save this, go back to the demo, build it, hope that it builds. It builds, that's great. And yeah, that was my last demo. So just some other bits and pieces that are not connected to this that much. But one thing that you should really install if you work with Visual Studio and ReSharper is .peek, which is a free .NET disassembler, and it also has symbol server. So if you set up the symbol server for any library that you decompile through .peek, it will give you a symbol server, so you can just navigate into it and debug into it and rewrite the code even. So if you have a library that comes from GitHub and you just find a problem, it throws an exception, you find where the exception is thrown just by setting it up in this exception menu to capture the type of the exception. You put a breakpoint in there. You go there through the PDB, then you maybe rewrite the code to actually do what you think it should be doing, try it out, and then you go to GitHub, you give them your pull request, and in a few days it's fixed. Or maybe not, maybe you just stay on the edge of the library and you just guess what's happening. You don't want to be doing that. Then this tool that I promote everywhere, it's called Touch Cursor. You can use it to map your arrows on like this small keyboard as I have just by pressing space, and you can just go up and down on IJKL and to the sides and to the previous word and so on, and do all different types of bindings. So you actually type just like this with deleting and everything, without every time moving like this to the arrows, because that's really, really annoying, and it's really difficult to put your hand back on J if you go to arrows. So that saved my wrists. And yeah, I guess that's it. Maybe this last thing, which doesn't work if you have ReSharper built. But I don't know, there's just this plugin called VS Color that you can install that shows you errors in the build, and that's very useful if you are working with .NET Core, because there you need to fix the problems from the first occurrence, because if something happens in the bottom library, then your whole solution will just blow up with thousands of errors. But if you just fix, for example, that one small error in the library where you are, I don't know, logging or something, and you just have a build error in there, then it fixes almost everything. But if you start doing it from the top, then you have a hard time finding what the problem is. And that's it.
Ještě jednou.